Could you explain what's happening in regards to hospice regulation in the state? And would that differ from state to state?
Unfortunately, Connecticut is also one of those states that's really behind in terms of regulation. And if you look to Massachusetts or Rhode Island or any of our border states, they're way ahead of us. They have residences all over their state. And most of those residents are 12-bed facilities on purpose because they want them to feel like homes, not like nursing homes or institutions. So the other states are way ahead of us, and one of the things they've done is they've updated their regulations, and they have more contemporized regulations that are outcome patient care based. And we've gone through a long process, started with Jodi Rell, where we've tried to renovate the regulations and upgrade them and have them more contemporized, and we're almost there. Our hospice regulations in the state are from 1977, and they say things like you have to have a phone booth, 5 feet from a curtain, and they don't require private rooms. And we feel best practices are that you have private rooms for families at that time in their life.
Sure.
And so we're almost there. We have already had a bill that was implemented by many of our local legislators, and it passed both the Senate and the House of Representatives and was signed by the governor two weeks ago. And our next stage is that we have to go through the Regulations Committee in July, and we'll be ready to go.
Great. Now, Jodi, I'm sure that many organizations have approached you since your retirement. Could you please tell our audience why you chose to be involved with Regional Hospice and Home Care of Western Connecticut?
Sure. I think as you listen to Cynthia, I think it's almost self-explanatory. There's a need out there, and you're right. I am on several boards, and I volunteer. They're all volunteer organizations, and I love everything that I do and those organizations that I work with. But this is something that's near and dear to my heart, and of course it's local. Cynthia actually approached me about helping with the lending my name, if you will, and being an honorary chair of the building committee, if you will, and helping us to get the word out. And as I sit here listening to her, I thought, boy, thank you, first of all, for helping us get that word out about how important hospice is. I don't have a personal story to tell you, but I have been involved for many years with this organization. I used to actually be one of the waitresses, quote unquote, for the hospice breakfast. And we would fill the room and have people. These are all volunteers. These are all people who would come to the organizational breakfast. And the people who would be the waiters and the waitresses, for example, volunteered their time and would garner the support of those people that they invited to these breakfasts to make donations. This is how hospice is funded. And as Cynthia was just saying, the other thing that's important to note is that we don't have a hospice residence in our area. Yes, we have a way that we could send patients to a hospital, for example, at the very end of life. If someone who is in the final couple of days, for example, you may need acute care. You may need some type of heavy-duty care that right now a hospice nurse is taking care of in the home because they're not in a setting. So what do? They'll actually take them to a hospital. They may be in that hospital for a day or 2 days, and then they are sent on to maybe a nursing home. And then if they're lucky, they may be sent home after that. I asked Cynthia before we sat down today the terminology for that, and she was telling me that it is called burdensome transition. And it just breaks my heart to think that someone who's lived their whole life is suddenly considered a burden in those final days because there's no place for them. There's only so much you can do when you are in the home, and we provide that. But we need a place for that end of life. And a 12-bed residence facility, if you could see these pictures, I'm almost sorry we didn't bring them so we could hold them up for you and for your audience. But I think one of the things I love most about it is a home-like setting. And if you see it, there's a beautiful doorway there so that a patient who's in a bed would be able to go out and be outside. And it's not a hospital room. It's like being at your own home and going out your sliding glass doors, for example. And to me, to be a part of that and to make this become a reality in Western Connecticut, it's high on my priority list, and I'm thrilled and honored to do it.
Yeah, that's great. I think this is I have had a little bit of a personal experience with this when my mom was dying in 1999. she passed away right on President's Day. We had hospice in, this was down in Virginia, we had hospice in, and they really, you know, I just can't explain how they helped. They made the whole situation, you know, as bad as it was, you know, much better, and really comforted us. So, you know, my little experience, you know, that's why when I heard about your situation and building, I wanted to, you know, reach out to you. And you know, we're going to put this up on YouTube, so if you want to link your website or whatever, but I think it is important to get the word out. Now, Cynthia, do you have a timeline for building your hospice resident then? You mentioned, I guess, that it's going to be starting, but I don't know, from start to finish, or just, you know, again, with the bureaucracies, state, federal, whatever. Tell the folks a little bit about that.
We are just finishing the design implementation of the space, which of course we're making lots of changes, but the building itself will have a chapel, it will have living room space, it will have, as Jodi said, it will have patios that every patient bed will be able to be rolled out onto the patio so that patients can experience the outdoors. We already had our blessing of our property last week. We had a beautiful service where we blessed the property from an interfaith capacity, and the goal is that we'll break ground on the property right after the winter, unless we have another winter like we had this year, and then it will be this winter. But the goal is that we'll be in the building operating as a hospice residence by June of 2014, so 2 years from this month. That will also coincide with our 30th anniversary, which is really exciting. And the nice thing I think about the location too, that it's 2A, it's exit 2A off of 84, is that it appeals both to Brookfield and Danbury and the Western Connecticut region, but it also appeals to the lower Fairfield County because, as Jodi said, there's no hospice residents in this entire Western Connecticut region, nothing at all. So we'll get residents from all over lower Fairfield County and from Western Connecticut and Litchfield County who will come, you know, to the building and use the services.
Let me just add something to what Cynthia was just saying.
Sure.
You know, we're talking about the facility, and I know she touched on it a minute ago with the 11-year-old child. I think one of the things that bothered me early on was the fact that, when I say bothered me, not about our plan to move forward, but why this is so important. Think about how you felt when your mother was dying and the things you wanted to say to her in the privacy of your room or in her presence. And when you think that there is no private facility, where there is no place where a person who is facing that end of life, except in their own personal home right now, or in some cases a nursing home or a hospital, if they're sent there. But to have that special place where you can share the conversation that you always knew you were going to have someday, and the only thing that is separating you from the other patients in that room is a curtain.
Right.
And for us to be able to build a 12-room facility and to be able to have that space where you can have that private conversation, and, you know, let's face it, you know, Cynthia said it earlier when we're talking about a child of 11 years old it's going to be a real difficult time for their siblings that may be witnessing them dying at home. It is for anyone that's facing that, elderly or young. But for us to have that privacy, I think, will make all the difference in the world to the families.
Well said. We're coming close to the close of the show. Are there one or two things that you'd like to leave with the audience?
I have, you know, I kind of chuckle at this because people often say, well, you came in here, you didn't ask for any money. Well, of course, if you'd like to donate, we will, you know, there's always that possibility. But seriously, you know, we will be doing a campaign. We will be asking support from many, many people and organizations. And, you know, we know that we have an uphill battle as far as raising money. Not that it's impossible, but we plan to do it. People have asked if there would be any state assistance. Cynthia made it very clear the other night, they're not asking for state assistance. We're doing this strictly the way we've always done it, one person at a time.
I think we have, you know, we have amazing innovators in the state. I mean, the reason we asked Jodi to be part of this was because the changes in the regulation happened under Jodi's administration, and it was very instrumental in changing regulations that had been around for almost 40 years. But I think what's important to know is that we have amazing volunteers and supporters who come out to our breakfasts. They come and support us in any way they can. And I think that's very important to acknowledge all that people are doing, both on a legislative perspective, but also just from volunteer perspective and offering their voice and support. So we're thankful for that.
Okay, well, thank you. Well, we're going to wrap up our show now. Again, I'd like to thank tonight's special guests, former Governor Jodi Rell and Cynthia Roy Scutieri, President and CEO of Regional Hospice and Home Care of Western Connecticut, for appearing on our show. Thank you, ladies.
Thank you.
I want to remind our viewers that our air dates on Charter are on Charter Channel 21 on Mondays at 4:30 and Thursdays at 7 p.m. We also post segments up on YouTube. We'd love to hear from you, whether it be comments on current shows or prior shows, suggestions for future shows, or guest topics or topics that you'd like to see. Please reach out to us. You may contact us at brookfieldpublicadvocate@yahoo.com. Again, thanks for watching, and good night.